Hi everybody, so I'm going to continue my story and paint Edward Scissorhands. I'm using regular acrylic paint and my brush, the wand at robinmosesnailart.com and the unicorn for striping. So anyways, I left off with Miss Deborah's shop, the first shop I worked at, and her shop closed down because it was just too big. And there's no way, because all nail techs kind of worked with hairdressers back then, and so to have a whole nail shop was kind of progressive. And so I wanted to work in another all nail shop, and I don't know why I thought that, but I thought that it was better because it was progressive. And so I looked for shops in my area, and Rose and Deborah said that they would move to the shops that I picked or that Rose picked, whatever we were looking. And so when we left, we found a shop that was again all nail techs, and it was about half full when we got there. And nobody nobody told me these things, and so I want to pass them on to you. If this is your first change, is when you first start changing nail salons and you haven't got a clientele yet, you lose lots of clients, and it's because they don't want to follow you. They go to what's convenient for them. And if you notice, when anybody is cutting back on money, they usually cut back their nails first, and or their massages, and or their hair. They wait longer in between services and things like that, and we pay the price. And so you have to really think about that when you're taking on clients and you're taking new clients for real. Like when you meet someone, you ask them, is this just a one-time thing, and do you want to have nails all the time, and what kind of nail shape do you like, and things like that, and really feel them out and see if they are going to fit into your family. And just like every single person is different, every single family that you collect on your nail path is different. And my family was a certain family, Rose's family was a certain family, and I mean, just there were their families, and so you always respect everyone you work with families. That's their money, that is their friends, their people that they have confiding to them, and vice versa. And so I went in with that you respect each other's families very much, and you keep quiet when someone else's family is around, and like you really, you think about that kind of stuff. And when I moved into that shop, it was completely different. We all had our own phones at our desk. There were no cell phones, and we had our own ashtrays, and it was a smoking most shops were smoking, and so everybody was smoking. It was very smoky in there. The chemicals were very dense in there because it was a very small shop. I had come from a large shop, so imagine being squished down to about 1/4 of the size with 3 times as much people. And the owner was this girl, and her mother bought the shop for her, and every day she would come in and clean the towels. She would collect the rent, she would collect the everything, and she did all the cleaning at night, all the vacuuming, and everything like that. And it was expensive to work there. There were all types of girls in this shop, and it was my first understanding of, you have to pick a shop that fits you, and not all shops fit you. And in my mind, I started with such a great experience with the women who are teaching me and molding me. I thought that would be my experience through life and through nails, and I was very, very wrong about that. It became this place where there were little cliques where girls would come and go together, and 3 of them would hang out together all the time, and they'd give you dirty looks. And I didn't know what to expect about anything because I was from such a different environment than where I was sitting. And so I already had about, I would say about half a clientele. And so, I was just working, just grinding, just every day, just in there, come in, put my head down, do my work, leave. But I did find in that shop there was a lot of fighting and backbiting and taking clients and yelling, and just really not violent, but just very nitpicky. So let me tell you some funny things too. because because you could smoke at the shop. The shop. What I remember about that shop was there was a girl in front of me, and we were all working, and all of a sudden I just heard like that, and I look up just in time to see this girl drop a cherry from her her cigarette onto the desk, and it set on fire and burnt her eyebrows and her hair off in the front. And everybody's first reaction was to scream and run for her and all this stuff, and all I could do was laugh. I couldn't think of, like, I am the worst person when it comes to that kind of thing. I just freeze and laugh. It's just weird. That's why I had to do the Joker. It's like I do not act appropriately in certain areas, but at the same time I was smoking at my station too, and it was considered regular. And then in those days, you didn't have to have a new towel for every client, and so people would build towels like a mattress, and they'd be like 20 high. And if you had a lot of clients and a lot of towels, you know, your client would have her hand high on the towel bed that you created. I don't know if that makes sense anymore, but in the old days, that was something that we missed when we had to use one towel for every client, because it's almost like the comfort was taken out of the shop. And I don't understand why that is now, but back then it was a big deal. We fought for everything. HIV was just really starting to scare people in 80, I don't know, it became a thing where they were deciding whether or not we could even do nails because of HIV. And nobody knew the difference between HIV and AIDS. And some of the people that I worked with in shops had HIV. And there were some people that came into the shops with HIV, and it was terrifying when you didn't know what it was or how to eliminate any possibilities of catching it, or, you know, or anything like that. There was that. There was the smoking, there was the chemicals, there was state board. There was a lot of people on you at that time, and really made it hard, and made it to where they wanted you to wear gloves and masks and goggles and hats, and you had to be everything like as surgical as possible, but then they don't even want you to make minimum wage. And so like there was this disconnect that started to happen, where people either robed up and acted like doctors, and that was that, or everybody said, no, I am not going to do that, everything is fine, and they didn't do anything. And there was and so you could see who was who. And in the shop, it was like people were all the way masked and gloved, and then half of them were not wearing anything and smoking a cigarette. And it was very, very strange time for nails. And so that is where I met a few other people that I would hook up and take along with my journey. And one of them was the hair extension girl. She was in the back, and she rented out a room by herself. So she was like this rock star in the back that I didn't even know. You know, like guys would come in from the back and get their toupees put on by her, and all of her clients would come in the back and get their wigs done by her, and all that stuff. And they left discreetly and came discreetly. And so I made friends with her, and she was crazy, and she taught me so many cool things about hair extensions and wigs, and how they went on and what they did and all this stuff, and how many people wore them and nobody knew about it. And also that was a time where the casinos were really, really coming down on nails. And I don't know if it was related to the HIV scare or not, but during this time, that's when it started to be where the code was a 1/4 inch off of the free edge. You could only have a 1/4 inch of free edge, and it had to be a certain color table that you had to follow. And I always wondered to myself if this brand was in on it, because you could only use one brand. And so our selection was very limited. But I also would like to go and say at this time, the casinos were extremely hard on women. And so women talk, and it was during that time that it began to be like this whisper that you don't want to work in a hotel, because if you did work in a hotel, you had to do extra things. And I don't know what that meant, and I don't care to know what that means. It's for you to leave at your discretion as I continue to tell my story. But that's when it first started to surface. And I began to get more girls that were just beautiful girls, you know, cocktail waitresses that worked in the pits of the hotels. And I mean, these girls made a lot of money, and they relied on their nails and beauty and things like that. And so I got to hear some of their stories, and we had to measure the nails 1/4 inch, and every day they'd come to work and you would get your nails measured, your face looked over, your hair, your color of your nails, how high your shoes were, and your weight every single day. Someone did that to them before they clocked in or after they clocked in. And if it was out of the perimeters that they're given, then they would get a warning, and they couldn't fluctuate 5 pounds or anything. I mean, it was really strict. And so going at that shop, I started to see restrictions. I started to see just the general duality of jumping and wearing all the gear or no gear. And then this was also a time where the girls went to a nail show, and they talked about going to a nail show. And it was the first time that I ever really heard about a nail show. And now it's just so commonplace, but they were talking about going there and how much the tickets were, and I could not afford it at all. And my heart broke a little bit because I was really struggling to make my ends meet and get off my aunt's couch and try and get my own place and really try and make a mark and do well instead of always messing up like I always had before. And so I couldn't afford to go to the nail show. And so it was the next year, and they were going again, and Rose and I and Deborah left that shop quite early, but I remember that a bunch of us went to the nail show, and it's the only nail show I had ever been to. I went to one, and it lasted about an hour, and when I walked in, I did not feel like I was invited whatsoever. I did not feel like I was a part of anything whatsoever. I felt like I was being judged more so than in normal areas. And every booth I was met again with somebody that was a little bit tiny unfriendly or treated me like that I was a little bit lower than them. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if it was myself and my low self-esteem, or if that's the way it really was, but I did not get greeted with anything. And the only nail art that I saw being done there was the one stroke. And this is a big part of my story for nail shop number 2. So I saw one stroke nails, and they were done by women that were in Russia and far, far away. And back then the world was so much bigger. You know, you thought, wow, all the way from Russia, all the way from here. And the books and the VHSs, okay, that's how long ago this was. But the VHSs were over $180 just to learn one stroke on VHS. And again, my heart broke because I was like, I can't afford this, but I want to be successful, and these women look successful, and this is what I want to do with my life, but no one will help me, no one will smile at me, no one will talk to me. If they do talk to me, they try to sell me something, and I have no money in my pocket. It's like if you have no money in your pocket, and I want you to listen to this so deeply for those of you guys struggling. If you don't have any money in your pocket, it's like no one will talk to you, no one will give you any information. And when you do have money in your pocket, it's a big different story. And if you have leverage or any kind of clout or anything like that, it's totally a different story. But I was a new girl with no money and all these stars in my eyes that I just wanted to do beautiful nails, and I wanted to do beautiful acrylic, and I wanted to do everything beautiful on nails and make women feel beautiful. And that is from my heart to the death of me, is that I just wanted to learn how to do it and master it. And there was no help. And so I came back to home from that shop, and from that show, and I'll never forget that I was teared up, and I might tear up, but I never felt so out of place or unaccepted in my life. And it was nail school was bad, but like it's school, so there's a lot of people that are just not into it. But at a nail show, like where I was a new young mind, I I, I expected so much more, and I went and I felt disillusioned. But it did give me the sheer willpower to say, you know what I am doing right now is beautiful nail art, and I'm going to keep on trying to keep doing better nail art. So every time that I would go to the craft store, I would try a new brush, I would try a new paint. I would like spend like $5 a month, like buying new materials there, and it would be at Joann's Fabrics and Crafts, and that's all they had back then. And so I would buy a brush and they would break, or I'd buy a brush and it would lose its hairs. I'd buy a brush and I would mess it up scrubbing on it. I'd so many brushes. I have probably gone, when we did my last nail count, it was over 1 million, but I bet you that I have gone through 50,000 brushes at least in my, and those are just liners, not I mean just so many brushes. And over time I just learned what I liked the most, and I always had to cut them down and stuff. And then the girls in the shop would have me cut theirs down, and then the girls in the shop would come around and they would start watching me do nail art. And then suddenly, the girls all found that I did nail art well, and they accepted me a little bit at the end. A lot of them listened to country music. A lot of them, like went out to these bars and drank alcohol, which I had already stopped by then. And like all of that stuff was just not part of my life. And so Rose and I said, we got to get out of here and find another shop. And so I'll go on to shop 3 because it didn't last very long. Shop 3 consisted of, it was all nails, and it was mostly Asian. And I was only there a short amount of time, but I lost a few more clients, and because I moved again, because it was too packed and not enough walk-ins, and too much bickering, and too much of not getting along, even though there was never any anger addressed at me and or Rose. I mean, just it was just too much, and we were like, we need to make a change. And so we went down, and we worked at this Asian shop for a small amount of time. But during that time, I got to learn. And now Asian shops are sometimes looked down upon in our industry. They do not get the amount of credit they deserve. And I believe that when women all work together, and it doesn't matter what kind of women and stuff, you have so much fun. And like the Asian shop I worked at was one of the most lovely shops I've worked at, according to the people I worked with. And I learned so much about how different and how lucky I am. So I will just keep it very simple. Well, I might get into it more in other videos if you guys are sharing them and want to hear. But when I worked in an Asian shop, and Rose was still dealing blackjack, and so she was gone a lot, and it was just me. And I learned about culture. I learned how to cuss. I learned like so much. And so I befriended somebody there, a girl that is still special to me and who I love very much. And she was brought here on a boat, and she was trafficked here. And every single penny that she made went to her family back where she was from. And she worked as hard as me. So that's how I got to know her so well, is that it was just me and her most of the time, just filing in this shop. And others would come in, work for a while and go, and come in and work for a while and go. But me and her, we just sat there and filed all day. And she just looked at me one day and she said, you work really hard for a white girl, right? And I said, what do you mean? Like she said, in my country, everybody thinks that white girls do not work at all. And I understand that now, but when I was young, I wanted to just tell her, and I did, all of what I had been through, and that it's not the same for everyone. It's more of a class, it's not of a color, and it's more of money. It's all money. And so we just got this really special, wonderful friendship. And I was put there to meet her and learn her story. And I'm sure that I can add to this story for years because we are so fortunate, and it could be so much worse. And we should really get along and help each other because there is enough for all of us to have our nail family. And each, nobody, not everybody wants the nail art I do. They flat out tell me to my face, like, I don't want nail art, I just want gel. Okay, great. Here's this girl that I know that does great gel. And that's pretty much, oh, and and ironically is where I met one of the most amazing women who did do gel. It was the first time that I ever saw gel. And it was 90, I don't remember, 1991. And gel, I mean, imagine the gel, okay? And then I want to tell you my dazzledry story next after this one. But the gel, you had to do, it didn't level, so you had to dry it and cure it upside down so that you would have a curve. And when you had your curve upside down, it would set, but it took 3 minutes. You couldn't just flash dry it. You couldn't just, in and out, or do what you had to do. It took all this time, and this woman would intricately upside down build the stress area. And she would just sit there, and then when she was done, each nail looked so perfect. And she ended up moving to a really nice place, and she had a great career, just saying. So I am here to say that she made as much as me, and she never did one stitch of artwork, but her nails were so impeccable and so amazing that we just instantly got along. And that's when I realized that women who do things really well because of practice and hard work usually get along with each other, and it's the ones who don't want to work really hard and just want to just make an excuse and fight and start fights. They're equally as fun, but it's usually them that cause the fights. The ones that are too busy, they don't cause fights. So you learn to stick with the busy ones, and then just go out to lunch with them and have a nice time and hear stories, just nothing malicious. And so it was also in that shop where I learned about being malicious and talking and stuff. There was nothing to be malicious about in shop one. In shop one, I got along and said everything, and everybody was great, But shop two, there was some malicious stuff being said, and sometimes it was degrading and awful and racist and sexist and just awful things. And that's where I just, a few times I just go, like, just, oh my goodness, I can't believe that girl just said that, just crazy stuff. And one time this in shop two, they're like, Robin, are you afraid of lizards? And I'm like, no. And so they're like, oh, good, because there's a lizard by your station. And so I was waiting for my client, and I was like, well, dang, I don't want the lizard to run under my desk or anything, right? And so I turn and I go around, and there is this big, huge lizard wearing a studded dog collar. It was like a monster, one of those monsters from that island, and it was like illegal and 10 feet long, and I screamed as loud as I could and ran. But it was just like weird stuff like that. That's when I realized that I chose a strange profession, because like that is so common now, but it was the first time that things like that started happening, and you're like, what? And and the chick who had that lizard, she was really, really scary, so I couldn't even like I had to run. Oh, but anyway, that's what I learned about in maliciousness. So I learned that as long, it was something magical, really. And if you guys are listening to me this far, you're listening to Learn the Gems, and here is a gem for you guys, because I freaking love you guys. Okay, here we go. The gem is that people talk about other people. That's what we do. There's nothing really else to talk about, really. I mean, you can talk about what other people have done. You can talk about what other people are doing, and none of it has to be hurtful whatsoever. You're just talking about other people, and you are thinking about that, and you're trying to understand your experience and understand everything. You don't have to be malicious. And if you're listening to your client and your client is talking maliciously, you in no way have to engage that, but you can listen with the same ears. Like, if someone is talking maliciously, I think to myself, this woman needs to vent to me, and it's malicious, but I know that she's a good hearted person and it will pass. And I just let her let all that out of her while I'm filing and painting and making her feel better. And I do not take that in. And back then I used to, and that's when I really started thinking about why is this hurting me? It's because I was taking that maliciousness in. Now I want to say that when you're in those kind of environments, maliciousness happens, and you can't, and you're not responsible for it at all. Like, let's say that your client is talking to somebody else's client and they get into a fight, or they are talking about someone and that person is married to someone that somebody else knows, or something like that. It's like, as long as I know as the nail tech that I am not creating any malicious ill intent towards anyone, then I can't be responsible what other people say. It even happened to me last year. I accidentally had a client in the chair that knew some other client that was talking about something else that I had no idea was going on, and I did not think either way about it, completely neutral. But somebody really got their feelings hurt about it, and I had to say, oh my gosh, I am so sorry that any of that would happen into my shop, and that anyone who knows me knows my character and knows that I do not spread malicious intent, and that I hope that in your heart you know that about me. And that's all you can really do, is you can only create and maintain a good character. That's all you can do. And your character is your fate. If you are acting out and you're being malicious and you're being awful, well, then your fate is that sooner or later it's going to catch up with you, and you are going to catch all of the same poison that you've been spewing, and you're not going to know why. And that is coming from someone who has listened to people like, not spew, but spill their stories, just needing to vent and get some of that pressure out for 30 years. And I'm telling you, as long as you have a pure intent and you know that in your heart, and you love your client, like over time you learn to love them. I mean, and you know that there's no ill intent coming from you. That's all you can do. And in time, you'll see the beauty in that, and that you can't take it all on yourself, and you can't take responsibility for things that you have nothing to do with. But if you stay with your nose to the grindstone and you're practicing and you're smiling and you tell people straight up that, I hear so much in a day that I promise you nothing poisonous is going to come out of my mouth. I might be mad at someone, but let me be clear. I am only mad at them at this hour, and it will pass. And over time, people begin to trust that. And over a long period of time, you don't have to deal with any drama whatsoever. It's almost like it stops all drama in its tracks and gives people a safe space to talk and be friends and be friendly without fear. And I think that is really something that we can all agree needs to be brought back and cultured and grown and seeded and planted and watered and sunlighted and watered again, because there is not enough places for women to go and vent and have a good time and feel beautiful without the fear of being judged and hated and all of that comes with low self-esteem and being lonely and disassociated from groups and culture. Like, we need to bring that back. And so that's why I am sharing my story, and this is shop number 2, the first part, and I'm sure I'll go back to part 2 a million times with the with everything I have to say, but that's basic knowledge of shop 2. And then shop 3 was very special, but it was very much a blip, and then I'll go on to shop number 4. I love you guys, and thank you for making this part of my journey so much fun. It is great to be able to say all of this, and so you'll know what I'm talking about when I tell you just the funniest stories. I'm going to introduce you to some pretty crazy, wild characters, hopefully, even if it's just in my mind. Anyways, I'll see you back with more, and thank you for watching. I hope you liked Edward Scissorhands. He was fun to paint. I think I could have done a little bit better on the eyes, but I just, at the time, I was like, nah, I think I got enough. So anyways, see you back with more. Bye, everyone.